Hard and cruel and bitter was the land that met his gaze. Before his feet the highest ridge of the Ethel Duath fell steeply in great cliffs, down into a dark trough, on the further side of which there rose another ridge, much lower, its edge notched and jagged with crags like fangs that stood out black against the red light behind them. It was the grim Morgai, the inner ring of the fences of the land. Far beyond it, but almost straight ahead, across a wide lake of darkness dotted with tiny fires, there was a great burning glow, and from it rose in huge columns of swirling smoke, dust red at the roots, black above where it merged into the billowing canopy that roofed in all the cursed land. Sam was looking at Orodurin, the mountain of fire.
Hey there, Tolkieneers.
I'm Danny J.
And I'm Joel N. And we are...
Keep on Tolkien. Yes, indeed.
Welcome back for episode 72.
Yeah. We're going to be... we'll get into it here. Here's some announcements first, guys.
Yeah, so just an announcement. We've got our merch now available at our merch store. Go check it out at keep-on-tolkien-podcast.tmill.com.
Yes. Very cool. Tmill's a cool site.
Yeah, we're very proud of our merch.
Yeah, we're very proud of our merch, so check it out.
More merch coming in the future.
Yes. But today, let's get into it. We're talking about what? Mordor.
The realm of Mordor.
And I think I decided that Hugo Weaving has the best Mordor in the series.
I think so.
Yeah.
I think it's fair to say.
We could not defend against both Isengard and Mordor.
Mordor.
But yeah, briefly, what is Mordor?
So the name Mordor means dark lands in the Sindarin language, and it's called Nargun by the dwarves, which also means the same.
Yeah, and geographically speaking, it's the land east of Gondor, west of Rhûn, north of Khand and Harad.
Yeah, Mordor is known for being the home base of Sauron in the Second and Third Ages in Middle-earth. I think that's probably what most people will know it as.
Yeah, of course. Let's get into one of my favorite things ever here, some geography.
Yeah, this is some of the interesting shit. I actually learned a lot about the geography of Mordor from us doing this episode.
Did I tell you that me and our editor's team in 8th grade won the geography bee?
No.
Yeah.
Hell yeah.
Pretty cool, man. We love
this.
Geography.
Got this on lockdown.
Yeah, this is why this section is so extensive.
Couple of geography nerds here.
Yep.
So the geography of Mordor. So Mordor is surrounded on all three sides by mountains.
Yeah, of course. So it's three sides of mountains, but two mountain ranges, weirdly enough. So the ones to the north are the Ash Mountains, called Arid Lithui, which we're going to refer to them as Arid Lithui because that's how it mostly is referred to.
Yeah, and then the mountains along the western edge and along the south are the Ethel Duath, the Mountains of Shadow.
Of course. In Mordor, other than the mountain regions, is divided into three major geographical regions. What are those, Joel?
So the three regions of Mordor are Udun, Gorgoroth, and Lithlad. Lithlad is the one I was least familiar with.
Yeah, it's usually the one that people are least familiar with, yeah.
So let's start with the Valley of Udun.
Yeah.
So this is essentially located in the northwestern corner of Mordor. If you look on a map, the northwestern corner, there's almost like a little circular region tucked up in that corner where the Black Gate is and all that. This would be the Valley of Udun.
Yeah. And that's where Arid Lithui and Ethel Duath nearly meet.
But not quite.
Caranwyn Fonstead, our hero, rest in peace, has possibly an explanation for this in this geological formation in her Atlas of Middle-earth for the formation of the Udun Valley. And we got an excerpt here from the Atlas of Middle-earth. I think this is the first time we have ever pulled from the Atlas of Middle-earth.
So this is Karen's words.
At
the north end of Ethel Duath, at its junction with Arid Lithui, lay a deep circular valley ringed by sheer black barren cliffs, Udun. Tolkien described the vale as being encircled by arms sent out by the two ranges. The symmetry of the valley suggests either a caldera or a ring dike. A caldera is the remnant of a volcano that has exploded and or collapsed in on itself, and a ring dike is a circular ridge of cooled igneous rock surrounding a deep valley. It occurs when a round block subsides into an underlying magma chamber, and the fluid of magma is forced up around the edges. Often the upwelling is intermittent, leaving passes such as the Eisenmouth and Cirith Gorgor. Either process could have been resulted in the features shown by Tolkien, although compared to our world, either would have been gigantic. Imagine the original height of a volcano with a 45-mile base. This colossus would have towered almost 29,000 feet. In contrast, Mount Doom was only 7 miles across and stood at 4,500 feet.
Yeah. And we didn't forget about you non-Americans here. So that huge volcano that she's talking about, 45 miles wide, would have been 72.4 kilometers. What else we got here? 29,000 feet. That's about the height of Mount Everest. That's like 83 feet short of Mount Everest. That would be 8,839.2 meters, guys.
Yeah, so essentially, if this circle valley of Udun was created by a volcano, it would have been a colossal-sized volcano,
Yes.
way bigger than Mount Doom.
Yeah, Mount Doom is only 11 kilometers in width. Oh my God.
Yeah, and a little fun fact that Danny found, actually.
Yeah.
The largest volcano known to us is Olympus Mons on Mars.
Mm-hmm.
On the planet Mars.
And that just means Mount Olympus. And guess how big this fucker is, you guys?
This is ridiculous.
72,000 feet high. That's roughly 22,000 meters.
That's insane. Yeah, the base is about the area of the U.S. state of Arizona. It is a huge mountain, and I think you were saying it even like breaches the atmosphere.
Yeah, it sticks out of the atmosphere. So it's dormant now, but if it ever erupted, it would be pretty insane.
Spewing lava straight into space.
Yeah.
Yeah, it makes sense why they'd call it Mount Olympus.
Yeah.
The tip of it goes above the atmosphere.
The fabled, if you're not familiar with Greek mythology, the fabled home of the gods.
Yeah, so let's get into some features about the Valley of Udun.
Udun.
So the northern end is fortified by the Morannon, the Black Gate, and the Towers of Teeth.
Yeah, the Towers of the Teeth are also known as Karkost and Narkost.
And those are essentially on either side of the Black Gates, right?
Yes.
On that gap there.
These were originally built by the men of Gondor, but they fell into disrepair because of the Great Plague and a whole bunch of other shitty things that were happening to Gondor at the time.
Mm-hmm. And later, they get claimed by Sauron, as we know.
Yeah.
So the southern end is the Eisenmouth, also called the Carak Angren.
Yes. This is a narrow pass between two spurs of the mountains, Ered Luithwy in the east and Ephel Duath in the west.
Yeah, and this path leads to the plateau of Gorgoroth, and the pass is heavily fortified with forts and towers protruding from the steep slopes on either side. So the pass itself has great mounds of earth on either side that are spanned by a bridge. And we have an excerpt here about this from The Return of the King, the Land of Shadow.
For out of the main range there sprang a high barren spur, thrusting eastward like a wall. To meet it, there stretched out from the gray and misty northern range of Ered Luithwy a long jutting arm, and between the ends there was a narrow gap, Carak Angren, the Eisenmouth, beyond which lay the deep dale of Udun. So that's from the other perspective.
Gotcha.
Going the other way.
Okay.
Yeah. So if you're going, because this is from Return of the King, and they came from Minas Morgul, so they would have been approaching Udun from the south.
From the south instead of like from the Black Gate.
From the north is we kind of talked about it from the Black Gateway. Yep.
Right. Gotcha.
Yep.
Okay. Getting multiple perspectives.
So we got Gorgoroth on the south, Udun in the north.
So speaking of, let's talk a little bit about Gorgoroth now.
Yes, Gorgoroth.
So Gorgoroth is the high plain or plateau in the northwestern portion of Mordor. So the very northwestern corner is that circular valley of Udun, and then just past that a little further into Mordor, when it all opens up, it opens up into Gorgoroth.
Yep. So the borders are the foothills of Ered Lithgowi, that's the eastern boundary, and the Morgai, which is the black fence of Mordor, and that's the western boundary.
Yeah, the Morgai were essentially a smaller mountain range that runs parallel with the Efelduath on the western range, and it's running north and south.
Yep, it's like, yeah, it's literally a fence. It's like, so you have the Efelduath, which is the main mountain range, and that's kind of like more what you'd think of a regular moderate mountain range as far as like steepness goes. And then there's a trough.
Yeah.
And there's the Morgai like shoot up in a steep ass.
They're like foothills, but they're like sheer.
They're sharp.
And steep.
Yep. And Karen Wynn Fonstad, I didn't have this in the outline, believes that was a slip strike fault that created that phenomenon.
So many actual real things that could have done that.
Yeah.
I love how the possibilities are all coming together.
Yeah, Karen is so good at that too. It's so much fun.
Yeah, and just the fact that she can relate these things to actual geographic occurrences also is just, once again, just...
It's awesome.
It's amazing that Tolkien would know to write something that is somewhat realistic.
Yeah, I wonder how much he knew about geology.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so the Morgul Road that we know of from the Return of the King with Frodo and Sam, this road crosses between the Efelduath and the Morgai, so it kind of goes down that trough, right?
It goes straight across the trough. Yep.
Across the trough. Yep. Okay. So it spans the trough. Mm-hmm. And Sam and Frodo, this is how they cross it.
Yeah, and we got a little excerpt. I think this is from Return of the King, right? Yep, this is Return of the King, The Land of Shadow, by Joel here. Here we go.
The eastern faces of the Efelduath were sheer, falling in cliff and precipice to the black trough that lay between them and the inner ridge. The short way beyond the way meeting, after another steep incline, a flying bridge of stone leapt over the chasm and bore the road across the tumbled slopes of the Morgai.
Yes. Another thing that this area is known for is that the mountains of Mordor appear black. To look at them is to see them black, right?
Okay.
So Karen Wynn Fonstad, our hero, she hypothesized what could cause this phenomenon geologically.
Yeah, so here's another excerpt from the Atlas of Middle-earth, some of Karen's own words.
Climbing the mountains, the hobbits were surrounded by constant examples of volcanic rock, which made the range predominantly black. Gabbros may have been thrust up, basalts extruded at lower levels or exposed in necks and dikes, all could have given the black appearance. Along the winding stair, the hobbits passed, quote, tall piers and jagged pinnacles, great crevices and fissures, end quote. These could have resulted from columnar weathering of basalts.
Yeah, look at that. Putting real world explanations to
Context
these formations.
to
I love this.
We get to one part in here where she was actually wrong, and it was proven by the History of Middle Earth series.
Oh, really?
Yeah, we'll get into it in a second.
Okay. Yeah, so there is a gap in the mountains to the south that leads into the region of Lithlad. This is the Plains of Ashes.
Yeah.
And Gorgoroth is a plateau.
We got a little definition in case you're not aware of what a plateau is if you're not a geography nerd.
Yeah, plateau is a usually extensive land area having a relatively level surface raised sharply above some adjacent land on at least one side.
And we got another Atlas of Middle-earth quote here about Gorgoroth.
Its level would have been higher than that of Udun and the plains of Lithlad. Tremendously thick layers of flood basalt were deposited through years of upwelling from the many fissures that pocketed the landscape. These were supplemented by flows from volcanoes, most of which had previously been active but had left only the skeletons, necks and dikes, low mounds, and in the southeast, where erosion was more advanced, mesas and buttes.
So the plain or the plateau plain is basically a plain, just in high elevation. The plain is mostly barren, but in the foothills of the Efelduath and the Morgai, there's some fucked up plant life.
Yeah, we got an excerpt here from The Return of the King, the Land of Shadow, talking about some of this nasty shit.
Mordor was a dying land, but it was not yet dead. And here and there things still grew, harsh and twisted and bitter, struggling for life. In the glens of the Morgai on the other side of the valley, low, scrubby trees lurked and clung. Coarse gray grass tussocks fought with the stones, and withered mosses crawled on them, and everywhere great writhing, tangled brambles sprawled. Some had long stabbing thorns, some hooked barbs that rent like knives. The sullen, shriveled leaves of a past year hung on them, grating and rattling in the sad airs. But their maggot-ridden buds were only just opening.
God, that's gross.
Yeah, I found that excerpt and I was like, I gotta put that in here. I like how fucked up the plant life is.
Maggot-ridden buds.
Yeah.
Oh, God.
Because it kind of seems like there used to be other plant life here. Like it says there's leaves from a past season.
Right.
So it looks like, I don't know, maybe the Mordor button is right. Maybe there were trees and shit. And then when the mountain came up, you know.
Yeah, it almost makes it seem like there still is actively life kind of trying.
Trying to be, yep.
Yeah. Because like with leaves from the previous year, I guess that would imply that there were leaves just a year ago.
Yeah. So let's get into some features of Gorgoroth Plateau.
Yeah, so within the plateau, we have Orodruin, which is Mount Doom, of course. Probably
The most prominent feature.
The most prominent feature. So this mountain, Mount Doom, was made by Melkor in the First Age for unknown reasons. But it's confirmed in the History of Middle-earth, Volume 12.
Peoples and Places of Middle-earth.
Peoples and Places of Middle-earth. Basically, before Middle-earth Volume 12 was published, Karen Wynne Fonstad hypothesized in the Atlas of Middle-earth that Mount Doom was formed as a result of a cataclysm of the War of Wrath.
And it was the same one that drained the inland sea of Hellicare. Remember that from like Year of the Trees bullshit?
Yeah.
And this was called a tectonic uplift.
Yeah, this all made sense, right?
That was her theory, yeah. But then it turns out that it was more of a Deus Ex Machina, and God literally made the mountain.
Gotcha.
It was Melkor just made it for whatever reason.
So Mordor...
She had this like beautiful, complex explanation of how this may have happened.
Yeah.
And then Home Volume 12 comes out, and they're just like, nope. Melkor did it.
Melkor did it just like Melkor made the Misty Mountains higher.
Yep. He just did it.
He just did that. That's an easy way to explain away certain geographies, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, Melkor just did that.
Melkor did it.
That was back in the First Age. Yeah, he did that.
Yeah, that's what he did for unknown reasons.
So Mordor, the Darklands, got its name from the ash spewed forth from the eruptions from Mount Doom.
Yeah, and we got a spooky little excerpt here about Mount Doom for you.
Ever and anon, the furnaces far below its ashen cone would grow hot, and with a great surging and throbbing, pour forth rivers of molten rock from chasms in its sides. Some would flow blazing towards Barad-dûr down great channels. Some would wind their way into the stony plain until they cooled and lay like twisted dragon shapes vomited from the tormented earth.
Yeah, dude.
Yeah, that volcano's just making things gross.
Yeah, that was from Return of the King, by the way. Tower of Kirithungel chapter. Sounds nasty, right?
Yeah, Mordor, I'm just getting the impression it's a nasty place.
It's a fucked up place to be.
For nasty people with nasty plant life and shit.
Yeah.
It's just nasty.
Yep. It is populated mostly by orcs and slaves, so.
Yeah, it's not a great place to be.
Yeah.
So Sauron chose to fortify Mordor because he needed the fires of Orodruin to forge his one master ring.
And do other sorceries, apparently.
And do other sorceries with it, of course. Like, well, why not? That seems like the ultimate forge, apparently, if you can make the one ring there.
Yeah. It's where the earth is hottest, bubbling up. Blah, 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 blah.
Yeah, and it also, this is when it took the name of Amon Amarth, Mount Doom, after its eruption in 3429 of the Second Age. And this is what signaled Sauron's attack on Gondor.
Yeah, remember right before the Last Alliance, they took Minas Ithil for a little bit, and Anarion was down there fighting him?
Yeah, yeah.
That was that time. That was when it got the name Mount Doom.
Gotcha, okay.
So yeah, Last Alliance took place a few years later. Another feature we got, this is a cool one that's not oft talked about.
No.
Sauron's Road.
Yeah, Sauron's Road. So this is a broad road paved with ash and rubble that runs from Barad-dûr to Samath Naur, which is the Cracks of Doom in the Mount Doom.
Mm-hmm. The road was at one point flanked by smoking chasms. And this was made it one of the only easy ways to traverse Gorgoroth.
Yeah, God, what a fucking awful place this is. The road reached a long causeway at the eastern foot of the mountain, and then the road around the mountain raises about 3,000 feet, about 914 meters, with the causeway raising another 1,000 feet, or a little over 300 meters.
Yeah, so that makes a grand total of 4,500 feet to the peak.
Yeah, in a sense, that's a long walk.
1,300 meters.
Yeah, a little over 1,300. That's a long fucking walk.
Yeah.
So we've got an excerpt here about the road from The Return of the King, Land of Shadow.
He did not know it, but he was looking at Sauron's road from Barad-dûr to Samath Naur, the Chambers of Fire. Out of the Dark Tower's huge western gate it came, over a deep abyss, by a vast bridge of iron, and then passing into the plain it ran for a league between two smoking chasms, and so reached a long sloping causeway that led up the mountain's eastern side. Thence, turning and encircling all its wide girth from the south to the north, it climbed at last high in the upper cone, but still far from the reeking summit, to a dark entrance that gazed back east straight to the window of the eye in Sauron's shadowed, mantled fortress.
God, Mordor is just so spooky.
Yeah, like what the fuck, man?
So speaking of Barad-dûr, let's talk about that next, because that's another feature of Gorgoroth.
Prominent feature.
Another very prominent feature. Sauron's Tower, his home base, his massive fortress.
Yeah.
The Dark Tower.
Yeah, it's known as the Dark Tower, the stronghold of Sauron, of course. And it's made of nearly unbreakable material, it's said.
Yeah.
And it appears black.
Yeah, possibly carved from a mountain of iron or adamant.
Yeah, and I had a little Tolkieneering thing here that because we just recently talked about.
In the Khazad-dûm episode.
In the Khazad-dûm episode. Mm-hmm. He got a hold of a lot of the mithril.
Yeah, from Khazad-dûm.
From Khazad-dûm.
Yeah, he had the orcs plunder Khazad-dûm for all of its mithril hoards, and he took almost all of it.
Yeah, so I'm thinking maybe he used that to reinforce Barad-dûr.
Yeah, it's stated that Sauron was known to covet mithril and that he got a lot of it, but we never know what that ever got put into. We don't see any explicitly like mithril anything coming out of Mordor.
No, that's what I'm saying. He threw it all into the tower, I think.
Yeah, I think that's a fair assessment. We had some suspicions that maybe he used the mithril for the foundations as well of Barad-dûr.
The unbreakable foundations, yeah.
Yeah, what better unbreakable thing to use to make your foundations than some sort of mithril or mithril-like ore? We started to suspect whether or not he used mithril and iron together to make some sort of an mithril iron alloy.
Yeah.
Because if he were going to use any other metal to make an alloy, it'd probably be iron, because that just seems to be what he uses.
Yeah, it's the most workable, most common.
Anyway, yeah, some fun Tolkieneering.
Yeah.
What did Sauron do with all his mithril? What do you guys think?
Yeah, let us know. Log on to the Discord. Put it in the Tolkieneering section.
Yeah. So we'll talk a little bit more about Barad-dûr later, but this brings us to a fun segment that we've got for you.
Yeah, this is built off an old joke, which most of our fun segments are. When we were talking about the Last Alliance, when we talked about that they camped at the plains of Gorgoroth.
Yeah, what an awful place to camp.
We said we thought it would be funny if Gorgoroth was a state park. And we were like, yeah. So this is an ad, a radio ad for Gorgoroth State Park, you guys.
That's right.
That's right. Enjoy this, please.
We hope you enjoy. We hope you'll be inspired to visit this lovely state park.
Visit Gorgoroth State Park, guys. Middle Earth.
Middle Earth.
Vast and beautiful.
Vast, beautiful. But there is no place like the rugged Southeast.
Southeast. Come join us.
Join us.
For the adventure of a lifetime.
In Gorgoroth State Park.
Gorgoroth State Park. In the land of Mordor, where adventure lies.
Adventure. Come and see.
Come and see.
The arid plateau of Gorgoroth.
Arid plateau. Camp in the foothills of the Morgai. After a breakfast of local Orcish cuisine,
Orcish cuisine.
challenge yourself to some of the best rock climbing in all of Arda.
All Arda. Come and see
Come and see
Gorgoroth State Park.
Gorgoroth State Park. Take a long hike in the foothills of the Ash Mountains.
Ash Mountains.
Bathe yourself in our oily mountain streams.
Bathe yourself. See the locals and how they live.
Come on, you rats. Put your backs into it. Dig those ditches. We have work to do. Come on, maggots. I'll report you to Lugboors.
See
See
the utter majesty of Orodruin, the Mountain of Fire.
Mountain of Fire. Take a romantic stroll down Sauron's Road.
Sauron's Road.
Hold hands as you cross the summit Knower.
Old hands.
Share a kiss and a selfie at the Crack of Doom.
The crack of doom.
Cuddle up next to one of our many lava-filled cracks, fissures, and chasms. Because remember, Mordor is for lovers.
Mordor's for lovers. Enjoy all the greatest amenities that Northwest Mordor has to offer.
Amenities.
Eat at Ugluk's world-famous bistro at the top of Barad-dûr. Dine on 5-star elven food prepared by Mordor's many elven slaves.
Elven slaves. Enjoy our state-of-the-art healthcare facilities.
State of the art.
Look at him. Can't take his medicine, boys.
Take our ATV excursion up to the Eisenmouth and behold the Black Gate, one of Mordor's most famous landmarks.
Mordor's landmarks. Gorgoroth State Park.
Gorgoroth State Park.
Come and see.
Come and see. Now let's hear from a longtime visitor to Gorgoroth State Park.
Gorgoroth State Park.
Hey there, guys, it's me, the Witch King. As you may know, I make my home out east there, over in Minas Morgul, you know what I mean? But I travel to Gorgoroth regularly for work, and let me tell you what, it really is the most beautiful gosh darn place I have ever been. Just look at the place, you know what I mean? It's a friggin' paradise. Natural oil tar pits, wild trolls roaming here and there. Oh gosh, I really love Gorgoroth. And remember, gang, Mordor's for lovers.
Come and see.
Come and see.
Gorgoroth State Park.
Gorgoroth State Park. In Mordor, where adventure lies.
Where adventure lies.
This ad was paid for by Mordor Board of Tourism. Oi! I thought I told you maggots to get back to work.
And that's that, guys. Thanks for listening. Hopefully you liked that.
Honestly, if I'm being honest, I think that was actually one of my favorites of the little bits that we've done.
That was very fun. I enjoyed that a lot.
That was maybe just because it was one of our inside jokes we've had for a while. But
Gorgoroth State Park.
bathe in the oily waters.
Save yourself. I was just like, I remember when I was writing that, I was like, what does a stupid ass travel commercial sound like? And that's what we came up with.
Yeah, so we hope you guys enjoyed that little bit. We had some fun with that one.
Yes, we did.
Gorgoroth. Yeah, because we were talking about Gorgoroth. Well, let's jump into another feature.
Well, this is the third geographic region.
This is the third geographic region. So we already talked about Udun and Gorgoroth.
And now we get to Lithlad, the Ash Plains, and that's Sindarin.
Yeah, so this is south of Ered Lithwi and east of Gorgoroth. So this area is the largest geographical region in Mordor.
And this is like less of what you think of when you think of Mordor. And yeah, we have a little excerpt about that from The Return of the King, the Land of Shadow chapter.
Neither he nor Frodo knew anything of the great slave-worked fields away south in this wide realm, beyond the fumes of the mountain by the dark, sad waters of Lake Nirnen, nor of the great roads that ran away east and south to tributary lands from which the soldiers of the Tower brought long wagon trains of goods and booty and fresh slaves.
course, got to get there. I love that. Elven slaves.
Elven slaves in Gorgoroth State
Like,
Park.
that's a selling point. Oh, yeah. But yeah, always, he's into slavery, guys. It sucks. But,
It's not a good thing.
it's not a good thing.
But yeah, so it seems like there was actually some things grown. Slave-worked fields away south.
Yeah. This is actually the most fertile region of Mordor.
Over in Lithland, next to Lake Nirnen.
Yeah. The soil there was full of ash and also many highly weathered rocks, adding to the fertility of the soil.
I suppose that would make sense. You think of Mordor as a barren place, but generally, volcanic ash is pretty fertile, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
So Sauron used the land to feed his armies, and the dry land farming was undertaken by Sauron's many slaves. And we've got an excerpt here from the Atlas of Middle-earth.
The plateau, Gorgoroth, was barren, and had all Mordor been that formation, Sauron would have little to feed his countless troops. But conditions were somewhat better in Lithlad, the ash plain. There, the flows of more solid material were apparently less, or were mostly eroded. If the rock there were highly weathered, the resulting soil would have been quite fertile. In the semi-arid climate, water was in short supply, for the bitter sea of Nirnen, with its interior drainage, was salty. Still, a recent deposition of ash would have helped with conservation of water. For ash is highly effective mulch, reducing evaporation, and that would allow dry land farming in the, quote, great slave-worked fields, end quote.
Yeah, so while it was dry, not a lot of water, apparently having a volcano nearby would have been pretty advantageous for farming in the
Yeah,
southern
it keeps the moisture in the soil, apparently.
Yeah, so let's talk about a few features of Lithlad.
Oh my god, this pissed me off more than anything about this whole fucking episode here.
Yeah.
There are 4 rivers in Mordor, but none of them have names.
They're all unnamed rivers.
What the fuck, Tolkien?
Come on, man.
So we got 2 of those rivers flowing from the north out of arid Lithwy.
We got one flowing from the west out of the Duath, and then one flowing from the south out of the Duath as well.
Yeah,
Because
when it
remember,
swings, yeah.
Yeah, Duath does that 90-degree thing.
Mm-hmm. The waters were said to be poisonous, most likely salty, and all flow into the also salty Sea of Nirnen.
Yeah, what a shitty place. How can you can't water plants with seawater, can you?
No, not that I know of. I'm not a farmer, but I don't think so. Let's get into the Sea of Nirnen a little bit. This is also called Lake Nirnen.
Yeah, but that takes us into...
We got a hot take here.
We got a hot take here. So the Lake Nirnen, Sea Nirnen, there is a difference.
So there's this ongoing lake versus inland sea debate that really bothers me. Some people say that the Caspian Sea is the largest, quote, lake in the world. But we know this is total bullshit, right? Because my hot take here, lakes are fresh water, guys.
Yeah.
All right? If it's brackish water, it's an estuary or a fucking swamp. If it's salty, it's a sea. You understand?
There you go. That's it.
And I say that because, of course, I am biased, but Lake Superior reigns supreme. We have the largest lake in the world in Minnesota. Here we go.
Yeah, I mean, personally, I would consider it a freshwater sea, but technically because it lacks salt, it would be a lake.
Yeah.
Technically, by that technical term.
And by this logic, the Great Salt Lake, not a lake. It's an inland sea.
Inland sea.
Salt Lake City, change your name. Inland Sea City.
That's right, sons of bitches.
Yeah, now that rant is out of the way.
Total bullshit.
Total bullshit. Lake Superior is the largest lake in the world. Suck at everyone else.
Nirnen. So Nirnen is Sindarin for dark waters or sad waters. And I would be pretty sad next to this inland sea too.
So, yeah, it's salty. I imagine it's just incredible. It does say incredibly salty as well.
Incredibly, not just salty.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, it was also called the dark waters or sad waters because the waters were said to literally be dark, dirty, and incredibly salty.
You know, the area around was mostly populated by Sauron's slaves.
Yeah, the region was gifted to the freed slaves of Mordor by King Elisar after the fall of Sauron at the end of the Third Age.
Yeah.
So apparently that realm was still somewhat habitable.
Yeah, he gave it to the slaves. Nice of him. Let's get into some of these. So Mordor is all about security and lockdown, right? So it's got a lot of strongholds. So let's talk about some of those.
Yeah, some of these I didn't even really know about.
Yeah. Let's get to the first one. This is we're familiar with. This is the Tower of Cirith Ungol.
Yeah, so this is Sindarin for Spider's Cleft.
Or Spider's Pass, yeah.
Or Spider's Pass.
Either way.
And this is the tower that guards the pass of Cirith Ungol, naturally. The mountain pass that leads from the Morgul Vale through the Ethel Duath into Mordor.
And the giant spider Shelob is known to dwell in that pass.
Naturally, originally called Cirith Duath, Pass of the Shadow.
And this is the tower, of course, where Frodo was imprisoned after being captured by orcs. And we got a little excerpt from The Return of the King, the Tower of Cirith Ungol.
Sam stood aghast, for now, looking to his left, he could see the tower of Cirith Ungol in all its strength. The horn that he had seen from the other side was only its utmost turret. Its eastern face stood up in 3 great tiers from a shelf in the mountain wall far below. Its back was to a great cliff behind, from which it jutted out in pointed bastions, one above the other, diminishing as they rose, with sheer sides of cunning masonry that looked north, east, and southeast. About the lower tier, 200 feet below where Sam now stood, there was a battlement wall enclosing a narrow court. Its gate upon the near southeastern side opened on a broad road, the outer parapet of which ran upon the brink of a precipice until it turned southward and went winding down into the darkness to join the road that came over the pass.
Indeed. That sounds pretty scary.
Yeah, it sounds like it's pretty big on the eastern side.
Mm-hmm.
3 tiers, they said.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty big. It's bigger than, for whatever reason, I always imagine it to be.
Yeah, and something you might not have known about this tower is that it was originally built by the men of Gondor after the Last Alliance to keep the evil servants of Sauron from using the Morgul Pass.
It seems like most of the strongholds in Mordor were built by Gondor outside of Barad-dûr itself.
Mm-hmm. That's the only one, yeah.
So we've got a excerpt here about this from The Return of the King.
As he gazed at it, suddenly Sam understood, almost with a shock, that this stronghold had been built not to keep enemies out of Mordor, but to keep them in. It was indeed one of the works of Gondor long ago, an eastern outpost of the defenses of Ithilien, made when, after the Last Alliance, the men of Westerness kept watch on the evil land of Sauron where his creatures still lurked.
Yeah, they had fucking Mordor on lockdown.
Yes, they did. In this next stronghold, I had never even friggin' heard of.
Yeah, I had not either. So next, we're going to talk about the stronghold known as Durthang.
Durthang. And that's a castle on the north end of the Ethel Duath, where the range juts out to create the spur of mountains that create the borders of Udun.
Yeah, with Gorgoroth to the south. So this is essentially just on the northern border of Gorgoroth, on the Gorgoroth side of the mountains.
Yep. And there's a road that leads there from the Tower of Cirith Ungol in the south.
And there's another road that leads along the southern side of the spur to the Eisenmouth.
And also, yes, this one, another one built by Gondor after the Last Alliance.
Yeah, they just built stronghold after stronghold in here. They wanted to make sure nobody came back to Mordor.
Yeah.
Next stronghold that we're going to talk about, next major feature, is the Black Gate.
Oh, very famous Black
also
Gate.
Called the Morannon.
Yeah, which is Sindarin.
So these are, of course, the heavily fortified gate that blocks the pass of Cirith Gorgor, where the Ethel Duath and the Ered Luthwi nearly meet, just north of the Valley of Udun.
Yeah, this is really considered the main entrance to the Land of Mordor. Because it's really the only entrance to Mordor that faces civilization.
Yeah, everything else, then you've just got the open eastern side.
Yeah, which is mostly arid, desertish regions, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
And the Morannon was built by Sauron around the year Second Age 1000, when he chose to make Mordor his stronghold.
Yeah, it was flanked by the Towers of the Teeth, which were already there.
Yes, it's Narcost and Carcost. You remember them from earlier.
Yeah, those were the ones that were originally built by the men of Gondor after the Last Alliance. Yep. And now he's just repurposing them for his own.
Yeah. The Morannon was actually breached by the Last Alliance just after the Battle of Dagorlad in SA 3434.
Yeah, that was during the Last Alliance when they finally busted their way into Mordor.
Yep.
I think it's the only time that's ever happened.
Yes.
Yeah, so this region was occupied by Gondorians until the end of the second millennium of the Third Age. This is when the men of Gondor had abandoned the Morannon, and it was possibly taken back by the Witch King when he returned to Mordor around this time in 1980 of the Third Age.
What would that sound like, Joel?
Hmm?
What would it sound like when the Witch King took over the Morannon? You're the voice of the Witch King.
Oh, geez, this sure is a great place to set up camp right here.
I love, of all the characters I've created, Joel's the Witch King is my favorite.
Thank you.
But yeah, another thing I didn't know is that that the Morannon can be opened either at Sauron's will, straight up, or with a magical password, apparently.
Blackgate's open with a magic password?
That's what it says right here in the Two Towers, and you're about to read it.
Let's get to it. None could pass the teeth of Mordor and not feel their bite unless they were summoned by Sauron or knew the secret passwords that would open the Morannon, the Black Gate of his land.
Yeah, dude. Straight up, know the password, get in.
Know the password? Get on in there.
What if it was just a parody, the Doors of Durin, and the password was enemy?
Say enemy and enter.
Yeah.
Speak enemy.
Speak enemy and enter. All right, let's get to another stronghold here. This one's very important as well.
Yeah, this is a pretty famous one. I'm sure everyone will recognize.
It's not technically in Mordor either.
No, but it is occupied by Mordor most of the time.
It's occupied land, yeah.
Yeah, so we're talking about the stronghold of Minas Morgul.
And this is the westernmost outpost of Mordor, like we said, not even technically in Mordor.
Yeah.
It guards the western side of the Pass of Cirith Ungol.
This is the dwelling place of the Nazgul, commanded by none other than the Witch King of Angmar.
Yes.
And this was originally named Minas Ithil, the Tower of the Moon, built by Isildur in the late Second Age. And it used to shine with the light of the moon, like literally the stone that it was made of.
It would absorb the moonlight and reflect it.
Reflect it back in like this pure, pretty white hue. But that hue of light has kind of changed in later years. And we've got an excerpt here from the Two Towers, the Stairs of Cirith Ungol.
All was dark about it, earth and sky, but it was lit with light. Not the imprisoned moonlight welling through the marble walls of Minas Ithil long ago, Tower of the Moon, fair and radiant in the hollow of the hills. Paler indeed than the moon ailing in some slow eclipse was the light of it now, wavering and blowing like a noisome exhalation of decay. A corpse light, a light that illuminated nothing. In the wall and the tower, windows showed like countless black holes looking inward into emptiness. But the topmost course of the tower revolved slowly, first one way and then another, a huge ghostly head leering into the night. That sounds spooky as fuck.
Yeah, that's another feature I always forget, that the topmost tower
the top
literally
part, it moves back and forth.
Literally rotates, like looking back and forth over the pass.
Yep.
And I love the description of corpse light. I thought that was appropriate.
A corpse light, a light that illuminates it, nothing.
Illuminates nothing.
Yeah, and of course, this Minas Ithil fell to the Witch King in the year Third Age 2002 after a 2-year siege.
Yeah, it was a bloody battle, but after that, it was forever after a huge garrison of orcs and other evil creatures like the Nazgul, as we know.
Where were you in 2002, Joel?
Where were you when when Minas Ithil fell?
Yeah, where were you when Minas Ithil fell to the Nazgul?
So let's talk about the final and most famous stronghold in Mordor.
Yes.
The one and only Barad-dûr.
Yes, and that is Sauron's main fortress and stronghold. Might have heard of it.
Has a few names.
Yeah, Barad-dûr being the Sindarin one for Dark Tower.
And our favorite name probably.
Yeah.
Lugburs, which is black speech for the Dark Fortress or prison.
Then we got Taras Luna, which is Quenya, for Dark Tower.
And then there's also another Quenya term for it, which is Luna Turco, which is Dark Stronghold. I had never heard either of those Quenya terms before.
No, and I found those apparently they are not in the text, but they are elsewhere in Tolkien's writings.
Okay. So Sauron began the construction of Barad-dûr around 1000 of the Second Age, and it took a total of 600 years to build this.
Yeah, it was only finished in the year 1600 SA when the One Ring was forged.
Yes, the power of the ring was used to finish the construction of the fortress. We also know that it was used to make the foundations, right?
Yep.
And the fortress could not be destroyed completely while the One Ring still remained.
Yeah, always those foundations. That was the part of it that always stood.
Yeah, it was destroyed for the first time in the year 3441 of the Second Age, after Isildur cut the ring from Sauron's hand. They razed the tower, but the foundations were unbreakable and remained intact, which is what caused us to suspect
Mithril.
that maybe he had some mithril that he used to make the foundations.
Are we
And
just joining this like let's speculate about Mithril train that apparently the community's on right now because of the show?
Yeah, I think so. I think this is a much more fun way to speculate about mithril rather
Than what they did.
that stupid Silmaril shit. No.
Yeah, we're better than the show.
No, well, I mean, we're just speculating what Sauron did with his mithril, because he had a ton of it.
Yeah, he had a bunch
we know
of it.
for a fact he had a ton of it. What did he use it for?
I
suspect.
we'll have to see if the years match up of like when he looted.
So the fact that the tower was torn down would make me think the tower would not have been made of mithril at this time.
Mm-hmm.
But perhaps the foundations were. And if I'm remembering correctly, the fall of Moria didn't happen until the Third Age, so that's when he would have gotten his major influx of mithril. Maybe he rebuilt the tower using
With
mithril in the Third Age.
And the only thing that could bring it down was when the ring was destroyed, yeah.
Bring it down, bring it down.
Bring it down, bring it down. Somebody said that at the convention yesterday. I don't know what they were talking about. Was that you?
I think that was me. Yeah. I can't remember what the context was. There was a lot of nerdery going on at the convention. We were, if you guys didn't know, we're recording this the day after we went to Twin Cities Con.
Yeah, it was really fun.
It was a fantastic experience.
We got to take a photo with Sean Astin, and Elijah Wood.
Frodo Wood, yes.
And Frodo Wood.
Yes.
Yeah, and we saw their panel too. They were both very delightful.
Yeah, they were fantastic.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll have a little more content coming out about that a little bit later. So
yeah. But reconstruction of Barad-dûr actually began again in Third Age 2951, and that was under the instruction of the Nazgul.
So it was.
Could you imagine the Nazgul being your foreman?
Yeah, and they completed particularly quickly. They completed it 2 years later.
Yeah.
In TA 2953.
Really scared of the Nazgul, those slaves.
Super efficient, apparently. And the top section of the tower had the window of the eye. So this is essentially what inspired the big flaming eye from the movies that we see. That's not canon. Usually it's just a big tower with a window that like glows red, right? Mm-hmm. And then it's called the window of the eye.
Yeah, we get into that. A little bit later, we talk about Peter's influence.
Gotcha. Okay, I'm jumping the gun.
It's all good. But first, we got an excerpt from you, actually.
From the Fellowship of the Ring, the breaking of the Fellowship.
Indeed.
Then at last his gaze was held, wall upon wall, battlement upon battlement, black, immeasurably strong, mountain of iron, gate of steel, tower of adamant. He saw it. Barad-dûr, fortress of Sauron. All hope left him, and he suddenly felt the eye. There was an eye in the dark tower that did not sleep. He knew that it had become aware of his gaze.
Ooh.
That's spooky.
Yeah, and that's when he's sitting on the
chair, right?
Chair of Amun-Sul, yeah.
Yeah, this is around the breaking of the Fellowship, right?
Yeah, Amun-Hen, sorry, not
Amun-Hen.
Yeah. So let's talk about this for a little second. What do we think of Peter Jackson's interpretation of the Eye of Sauron?
Yeah, he made it more like a sentinel eye and that huge flaming eye atop of the tower, when in the book it was a little more ominous almost.
Yeah, it was just kind of a red room that was like illuminated.
But you knew there was someone in there watching you.
Yeah.
That is almost a little more ominous than just like a big flaming eyeball.
Yeah, I see why for the movie they made the big flaming eye, because it looks fucking cool, right?
Yeah, it looks cool. Oh, there's Sauron.
Yeah,
but
there he is.
I kind of like the idea of he's just like this fucking awful power up at the top of this tower, and you can tell he's there.
Yep.
He's in that red glowing window, and he's watching you from there.
Yep. I love how the Sammath Naur faces that window too.
Mm-hmm.
So he's like watching what's going on in Mount Doom.
Yep. You can always see.
Always see.
Yeah. So Barad-dûr 2, kind of like Death Star 2, finally collapsed into ruin on March 25th of that fabled year 3019 of the Third Age.
Yeah.
When the ring was finally destroyed.
Yeah, and we got a cooler excerpt about that later on in the episode, so don't fret.
Yeah, so now that we're kind of done talking about the features and geography of Mordor, let's briefly touch on the timeline, which I'm sure most will be pretty familiar with.
Oh yeah, this will be a breeze for most of us.
So let's start in the First Age.
So yeah, the Land of Mordor It was given to the lands that were surrounded Orodruin after Melkor made it, right? So that's where we get the title Mordor when the volcano becomes a thing.
Yeah.
And this is obviously, it's called the Darklands due to the volcanic ash, various igneous rocks, and the perpetual darkness caused by ash clouds.
Not much is known about Mordor during this time, but it is assumed it remained empty until the coming of Sauron in the early Second Age, with the notable exception of Sheila, because as we know, she was there early.
Oh yeah, we'll get into that in a second here too, I think.
Mm-hmm.
In the First Age, the Druidain, you'll remember them. You remember Hanbury Hans people?
Hanbury Han, the Druidain are really cool people.
Yeah, we love the Druidain. We were just talking about when we were warming up the interesting history of the Druidain
Yeah,
people.
they're very mysterious and magical, and kind of spooky too, actually.
And we do know through their tradition that they migrated west into Gondor from the lands that are now Mordor, and it's thought to be that they might be fleeing from what is now Mordor after the raising of Orodruin.
Okay. So sort of some of the events being depicted in season 1 of the show
Could kind of be accurate.
You could kind of lift some of those scenes from maybe this event.
Oh yeah, definitely.
I thought
It's not a huge stretch.
No, not a huge stretch. It would have been cool to actually see some of the Druidain, though. Some of those dark, magical voodoo men, coming out of Mordor because now Mordor is too dark for even them.
Yeah, dude.
That'd be kind of cool to see. But anyway, so in the First Age, that's when the Druidain migrated into Gondor.
Yeah, and they later crossed their way into Ithilien, and actually didn't know this either, became the first group of Edain to cross the Anduin.
Oh, really?
Yes. So let's get into the Second Age.
So Second Age. So the first known resident of Mordor, like we mentioned earlier, was Shelob the Spider.
Yes.
Well, we should say she's like a spider
demon thing.
Spider demon.
And she settled in the pass of Cirith Duoth, is what it was called then.
It later becomes Cirith Ungol, as we know.
Yeah.
And this is suspected to be that she settled here because she was fleeing the Valar after the War of Wrath at the end of the First Age.
Kind of like the Balrog and Moria.
Exactly.
Yeah. Sauron chose to settle in Mordor in the year 1000 of the Second Age.
Yeah, he repaired the Towers of Teeth and garrisoned orcs there, and he also built the Black Gate between those towers and began construction of Barad-dûr I.
Yes. Sauron forged the One Ring in the fires of Orodruin and used its power to complete Barad-dûr in SA 1600.
Yeah, like we mentioned earlier, it took 600 years to complete Barad-dûr I.
Yes.
So, in Second Age 1693, Sauron allied with men in the adjacent lands, presumably east and south and west, right?
West as well, yep.
He allied them to the aid of Mordor, essentially. So men from the White Mountains and Calenarden.
Yeah, and he used these dudes, his new friends, to launch an all-out assault on Eregion to reclaim the Rings of Power in that same year, 1693.
Yeah, so Sauron overran Eregion for 6 years before aid would come on their behalf.
Yeah, dude. 6 years of just raising the place.
Yeah, so this is actively the War of the Elves and Sauron, right?
This is correct. Yep, correct. Yep.
So in the Second Age, 1701, the Númenórean navy under Tar Minastir pushed Sauron back to Mordor and liberated the Wildlands and saved Eriador.
Yeah, we learned about that in the Rohan stuff, remember?
Yeah.
Yeah, when the Rovanian was under occupation.
Unfortunately, not in time to save Eregion specifically, but the wider lands of Eriador were saved, yes.
Yep.
So the Númenóreans earned the lifelong hatred of Sauron after
This right here is when the beef begins.
This is when the beef begins, because he had owned the most land he'd ever owned at this point.
Oh,
right?
yeah, all the way up to where Rivendell would be after this. Yeah.
He had almost half or more of Middle Earth.
Yeah.
At that time. So he was huge. That was the most powerful and prominent he'd ever been. And then the Númenóreans came along.
Cha-cha.
Ones for you and those dang
I would have had it if not for you and those meddling Númenóreans. Yeah.
Meddling Númenóreans.
So Sauron was now focused on after being pushed back into Mordor. He started focusing his corruption of the men of the east and south. So that's Harad, Khand, and Rûn. And he brought them under his dominion.
So over the next 1,000 years, he gained great strength through them, and he began to call himself the King of Men.
And who heard about that? A little birdie told Mr. Ar-Pharazôn of the Númenóreans.
The current king of the Númenóreans.
Our Pharazôn the Golden.
And in the year 3262 of the Second Age, this is when the Númenóreans came in force to crush Sauron.
Pretty much, I don't even know if they were intending to crush him. Just trying to see what the fuck is up. Basically.
Yeah, like, what are you doing, bro?
They pulled up and they were like,
what the fuck?
Fuck is up?
What is this?
Yeah, you want to go?
King of Men shit? Nah.
Yeah. Look at these. Look at these ships.
Yeah, it was like not even a fight when they were such an overpowering force. They literally just kind of like showed up and everyone was like, "Oh."
Yeah, all the men of Harad and pretty much all the servants of Sauron just fled when they saw the Númenóreans. They were like, "We can't win this."
Yeah, Sauron himself didn't even really fight. He just humbled himself before our Pharazôn and allowed himself to be taken captive to Númenor as their prisoner.
Which meant he had no other choice, basically. He was like,
yeah, so
this isn't the worst choice, but like, wouldn't have done this, yeah.
Right. So after the destruction of Númenor in 3319, which Sauron had a part to play in, he returns in spirit to Mordor.
Yeah, he takes up the One Ring again and he resumes his rule. But he was never able to take fair form again after that.
No, yeah, because his body got sunk with Númenor, which I imagine was a problem.
Fucks you up, yeah.
Fucks you up a bit. So his spirit was freed and was able to go back, but his body was destroyed. So
he had to like make a new one or whatever. When
I don't know how Sauron constantly does it. He loses power and then he gets power back. He's the only character, the only Maiar I know of that
does that. I think that's his special power.
It's his special power. We think it has something to do with necromancy.
Necromancy.
Anyway. So in 3430 of the Second Age, in response to Sauron's sudden resurgence, this is when High King Elendil of the Dunedain sought an alliance with High King Gil-galad of the Noldor. You might call it a last alliance.
Yes. And the High Kings agreed to extend this alliance to Durin IV of the Longbeards and King Orifer of the Greenwood Elves and also King Amdir of the Lorien Elves.
Yeah, all the free folk in these areas just
stacked.
Getting them all together. Together, all these kings that decide to raise a great host in a complete balls-out attempt to fully vanquish Sauron once and for all, and they become known as the Last Alliance.
And we're not going to get into this too far in this episode, because we got a whole fantastic episode about that, episode 41. It was a while ago, but it still stands up. It's a great episode.
It is a great episode, yes. Go check that out. So in 3434 of the Second Age, this is when the Last Alliance meets Sauron's forces for the first time and begins the most decisive battle of the war, which is the Battle of Dagorlad. This is just outside Mordor, just north of the Black Gates.
Mm-hmm. And Sauron's host was comprised of a variety of forces. We got Easterlings, Southrons, Black Númenóreans,
dwarves, orcs and goblins, trolls, and other unnamed beasts. So he had a hell of a spread on his side. The only people he basically didn't have on his side were any elves.
Yep, it's always just the elves, yeah. The elves remain resolute. The Battle of Dagorlad was a shit show in the beginning, but because there was contention among the hosts of the Eldar. Some of the elves refused the command of High King Gil-galad.
Yeah, there was still some bad blood amongst some of the elves in Noldor, the Sylvan elves in the Noldor and things, so that caused some issues. But eventually, after some issues and a few disasters... And massive bloodshed. While this almost proved disastrous, eventually Elendil and Gil-galad regained control of the situation, and they did gain the upper hand on Sauron's forces. And the battle raged for months, and there were heavy losses on both sides, but eventually our good guys came ahead and gained the upper hand and breached the Black Gates. And here is an excerpt from the Silmarillion of the Rings of Power in the Third Age.
The hosts of Gil-galad and Elendil had the victory. For the might of the elves was still great in those days, and the Númenóreans were strong and tall and terrible in their wrath. Against Aiglos, the spear of Gil-galad, none could stand, and the sword of Elendil filled the orcs and men with fear, for it shone with the light of the sun and moon, and it was named Narsil.
Yeah, so after breaching the Black Gates, the Alliance successfully drove Sauron's forces back to the fortress of Barad-dûr. They invaded Mordor.
Straight up. The remaining forces of Gil-galad, Elendil, Thranduil, Durin IV, they all camped upon the plains of Gorgoroth and prepared for the siege of Barad-dûr. And this is where the joke came from.
Barad-dûr State Park.
Yep.
Shitty place to camp out.
Yeah. The siege of Barad-dûr started in 3434 and continued for 7 years.
Yeah, and though Sauron was confined within his tower, he was not without any power. The Alliance constantly endured seemingly endless numbers of arrows, rocks, and flaming missiles that came from the tower, as well as regular counterattacks from Sauron's orcs on the ground.
Yeah, the Alliance took many casualties in these years, and probably the most casualties of the campaign.
Which is crazy to think about, just from sieging this
just
tower.
The siege, yeah.
The Alliance, so in the year 3440, Elendil's second son, King Anarion of Gondor, was actually killed when his head was crushed by a stone that was launched from Barad-dûr.
Ouch.
That is pretty visceral.
Yeah, what a way to go. 1 year later in 3441, the siege became so intense that Sauron himself emerged and joined a counterattack that broke the Alliance's lines.
And that just goes to show what kind of power this motherfucker had.
Yep.
Just him alone was able to change the tide in a battle, in a major war battle.
Yeah. They pushed him all the way to the slopes of Mount Doom, which is I think like 60 miles. So
that's
like,
pretty far.
Yeah. And we got a little a mini excerpt here from Joel.
But at the last, the siege was so straight that Sauron himself came forth, and he rested with Gil-galad and Elendil, and they both were slain, and the sword of Elendil broke under him as he fell.
Yeah.
Dark times.
So yeah, on them slopes of Mount Doom, Sauron fought against High King Gil-galad and Elendil in single combat.
Yeah, and as we know, Sauron, much more powerful than either this elf or this man. And Gil-galad is killed first when Sauron scorches his face with his hand. He literally grabs his head.
Yeah, just...
His hand on his face is so hot, it kills Gil-galad.
Do you think he cooks food that way? Like,
That'd be a pretty efficient way to...
Wouldn't that be cool? Like, you just hold it in your hands for a little bit, like you got a bowl of soup or something?
Just like hold it and let it boil.
Be sick.
But that's fucking metal, man.
His coffee would never get cold.
Literally burn Gil-galad's face off. Fucking crazy. So nearby, Elrond, Círdan, and Isildur watched this helplessly. And we have an excerpt here from Elrond, actually, during the Council of Elrond.
I beheld the last combat on the slopes of Orodruin. It was Gil-galad, Elven King, and Elendil of Westerness who overthrew Sauron, though they themselves perished in the deed where Gil-galad died, and Elendil fell, and Narsil broke beneath him. But Sauron himself was overthrown, and Isildur cut the ring from his hand with the hilt shard of his father's sword, and took it for his own.
Yeah, and at those deaths there, that ends the last of the High Kings of the Noldor.
Yeah, never again would the elves have a High King.
We never understood why they didn't ever crown Elrond as High King, because he is Noldor.
No, I say Galadriel.
I'm sorry, it's Galadriel. Yeah, because
that's our beef. Why isn't Galadriel High Queen of the Noldor? This is so sexist.
She's pure Noldorian, and she's of the royal family.
She's Finarfin's fucking daughter.
Yeah.
He's literally High King of the Noldor in Tyrion.
Mm-hmm. Still,
what
currently,
the fuck?
to this day, yeah.
Galadriel needs to be High Queen of the Noldor.
In Middle-earth.
In the next election, guys, make sure you vote for her.
Make sure you vote for
Galadriel.
For Galadriel, High Queen of the Noldor.
It's ridiculous. Like,
write her in.
Even the Númenóreans would be like, oh, we don't have a male heir? We got a queen now.
Yep.
You know, like what?
Take it up.
Yeah, come on.
Also, this is the death of the first High King of the Dunedain in Middle-earth.
Yeah, this is High Kings are killed in this battle.
2 High Kings. The High Kingship of the Dunedain was passed down to Isildur. And there was also the death of the greatest warrior of all the Dunedain.
Yeah, Elendil the Tall.
Elendil the Tall. He was a very notable warrior.
Yeah, Aragorn liked him in many ways.
All these things happened within Mordor. It's just a lot of death.
Yeah, let's get into some more death in the Third Age.
Yeah, so most people probably know Mordor in the Third Age from Lord of the Rings and whatnot.
Yeah.
So in the beginning of the Third Age, Gondor kept watch on the land of Mordor to make sure that evil could not return. They occupied the Black Gate. They built all those fortifications that we previously talked about. There were, a handful at least?
Yeah, Towers of the Teeth being the most prominent, Narcost and Carcoss.
The mountain fortresses of Dorthang and Efel-Duath.
And Cirith Ungol near the pass.
And as the strength of Gondor failed, evil creatures began to move back into Mordor.
Yeah, the Nazgul returned in 1980, and they began to prepare things for the coming of Sauron.
Yeah, and they took Minas Ithil shortly after in 2002, securing the pass of Cirith Ungol for Mordor.
Yeah, Sauron, he didn't finally return to Mordor until the year 2941.
That's like 900 years later, Jesus.
Yeah, that was only when he had to, because he was driven out of Dol Guldur by the White Council.
That's when he was practicing his necromancy.
Mm-hmm.
So 10 years later, in 2951, this is when Barad-dûr is finished and Sauron openly declares himself. And by this time, Mordor has been long prepared for him by the Nazgul.
Yeah, I think there was another big eruption of Orodurin at that point when he declared himself.
And Mordor was totally beefed and could not be overthrown by any force of Middle-earth at this point.
That is what's cool. By the time he gets there,
up, thanks to the Gondorians, really.
Well, not only that, yeah, the Nazgul prepared the land before he got there, because it's like by the time he got there, they're so beefed that like nobody can fuck with Sauron at this point.
Yeah. Yeah, and they had taken over all the strongholds that all the men had built.
Oh, yeah.
And now it's just a super fortified land.
Oh, yeah.
So on March 14th of 3019, this is when Frodo and Sam made their way through the Morgul Pass carrying the One Ring. And they had the intentions to make their way across the plateau of Gorgoroth to Orodruin to destroy the ring.
Yeah, 10 days later on March 24th, the host of the West arrive at the Black Gate, and they're hoping to create a diversion for the ring to be destroyed. And we got a little excerpt about that moment from Joel.
They came within a cry of Morannon, and unfurled the banner, and blew their trumpets, and the heralds stood out and sent their voices up over the battlement of Mordor. "Come forth," they cried. "Let the Lord of the Black Land come forth. Justice shall be done upon him, for wrongfully he has made war upon Gondor and wrested its lands. Therefore the king of Gondor demands that he should atone for his evils, and depart then forever. Come forth."
Yeah. And then they also parlay with the mouth of Sauron, but negotiations go nowhere.
I love that scene in the movie.
It's so good.
The extended editions.
What does Gimli say? I guess that concludes negotiations.
I guess that concludes negotiations.
Yeah, and on the next day, March 25th, the host of the West challenges the armies of Sauron.
Yeah, and the battle that comes from this lasts just long enough for the One Ring to be destroyed by Sam and Frodo in the cracks of Mount Doom. Well, actually, I shouldn't say by Sam and Frodo, more by Gollum.
By Gollum, by fate, yeah.
Secret hero of Lord of the Rings,
Secret
Gollum.
hero.
So when the ring is destroyed, Mordor essentially completely fucking falls apart. And we got a fun little excerpt here from The Return of the King, Mount Doom.
Towers fell and mountains slid. Walls crumbled and melted, crashing down. Vast spires of smoke billowing up, until they toppled like an overwhelming wave, and its wild crest curled and came foaming down upon the land. And then at last, over the miles between, there came a rumble, rising to a deafening crash and roar. The earth shook, the plain heaved and cracked, and Orodruin wheeled. Fire belched from its riven summit. The skies burst into thunder seared with lightning. Down like lashing whips fell a torrent of black rain.
Ooh, black rain. That doesn't sound good.
Acid rain.
That's not good. Gotta take a shower after that.
Yeah.
So the Black Gate and the Towers of Teeth are essentially totally destroyed in this earthquake.
Mm-hmm.
And Barad-dûr, held together by the power of the ring previously, now just collapses.
Finally.
And Orodruin also erupts big time.
Big league.
Big league, yes.
And a bunch of flaming rocks that shoot out, they all kill the Nazgul in the sky. That's pretty sweet.
That was fun to watch in the movie too. That was pretty dope.
Yeah. Yeah. And Frodo and Sam are ultimately rescued by the eagles. $50 if you can tell me the three eagles that rescue them.
Oh, I can only tell you one.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay. It's Gwahir, Landreval, and Meneldur.
Yeah, I don't remember Landreval and Meneldur ever.
Landreval is Gwahir's little brother.
I knew one of them was his brother, but I never remember the eagles' names.
And Meneldur is like their top warrior.
I only remember Gwahir and Thorondor.
Yeah. Meneldur is like their champion. That's why they brought their toughest 3
Oh yeah.
to pick them up.
The Lord of the Eagles, and then the two tough
Tough
warriors.
guys.
Two
Yeah.
tough guys.
That's why that meme, like the third eagle was for Smeagol or whatever.
Yeah.
That's like kind of bullshit because they just brought their 3 toughest dudes. It wasn't like,
Well, let's fucking go.
yeah, like they just brought the best homies. Like, let's ride.
Yeah. But so that's essentially brings us to the end of our discussion on Mordor, guys.
Yeah.
So a few final thoughts about Mordor. It's a pretty nasty place.
Yeah, wouldn't want to be there.
The nasty place for nasty people with nasty shit, nasty water, nasty plants,
Nasty everything.
salty ass, oily water. It's just nasty all around. Acid rain,
Yeah.
fucking pits and crevices. Like,
Yeah. I enjoyed learning a lot about the geography and geology from Karen Wynn Fonstad, though.
I loved, reading a lot of Karen Wynn Fonstad's from the Atlas. That was really cool.
Yeah, that was really the first time I think we've actually pulled like some of that.
Some of her words.
The text, yeah. From the Atlas. We use the Atlas all the time. Like,
yeah, we love, now you guys get a little idea of why we love Karen Wynn Fonstad so much, because she's awesome, and we love her Atlas, and she explains all this geography so well.
so well.
She tries to find real world explanations for everything. She does a really good job, even when it really was just something that Melkor did in the first stage.
She had a whole explanation.
She had a whole explanation for it. We love you, Karen. Rest in peace.
I also never really realized how great of a fucking stronghold Mordor was, especially in the Third Age.
Right, that's insane.
It was locked down.
Yeah, it's like huge, massive walls on 3 or 4 sides, and then
They control the pass.
Any entrance has at least 2 towers. At least 2 towers guarding it at all times. It's crazy.
Pretty sick.
But yeah, so good shout out to the Atlas of Middle-earth again for a really great win, and thank you, Karen Wynn Fonstad, for everything you did to do for us.
Yes. So, guys, next week we got what? Episode 73. There's 73 episodes already. That's fucking crazy.
That's going to be nuts. But next week we're going to talk about the Elven realm of Eregion.
Eregion. This is also
heavily touched on in the show.
Yeah, exactly. And this is going to be again with our theme of relevance to the show.
Our theme of relevance.
Yeah.
Yes.
Hopefully, this Mordor shit was fun. And
Yeah,
Khazad-dûm was really fun too.
Mm-hmm.
And Eregion's going to be just as fun.
Eregion's going to be very interesting. So that's all we've got for you today, guys. Thanks for listening to Keep on Tolkien podcast.
Of course.
And as always, a big thank you to our KOT patrons. Go subscribe to us on Patreon. It really helps us. Go to patreon.com/KOT podcast.
Yeah, and that just helps us bring the same great content that you enjoy with the same level of quality. Subscribing can also unlock some cool exclusive bonus content.
Yeah, we also do private one-time donations. If a monthly donation subscription is not your speed, that's totally okay. We can make it happen.
Yeah, we have PayPal, other services. Just hit us up on social media and or email. Keep on Tolkien at podcast@gmail.com, and we'll make it happen.
Don't forget to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts, whether that's Spotify, SoundCloud, iTunes, what have you. Just go to that website /Keep on Tolkien. Stay up to date with all of our new episodes, and while you're there, don't forget to rate us or give us a nice review if you like us. If you don't, you can move along.
Move along, please. Make sure you follow us on social media. Join the Discord. I cannot stress enough, you guys, how much you need to join the Discord.
That's where most of the life is.
Yes.
I feel like nowadays we spend
Our
a lot of time.
Our community is straight up on Discord. So if you consider yourself part of the Tolkien community, you got to get on there, guys.
Jump on there. Yeah, join us, share some memes, talk to us about all the stuff we're talking about, all the current events, everything.
And me and Joel are constantly on Discord. We use it for our personal lives too, so.
Yeah, the server name is Keep on Tolkien Podcast, but there will be a link in the description of this episode.
Yes, and also in our YouTube videos and stuff like that too. So.
And don't forget to follow us on Twitter at KOT Podcast.
If Twitter is still a thing when this episode comes out.
Yeah, if Twitter still friggin' exists at this time, I suppose.
Yeah.
Yeah, things are a little up in the air right now with all the Elon Musk shit. So, yeah, we'll see about that. And then don't forget to follow us on Facebook, which also is not doing so well recently either.
No, if these platforms still exist when you're hearing this, follow us there. Make sure you join that KOT Talk group and ask us some questions and discuss with other listeners.
And also Instagram, which is also attached to Facebook, I guess. But, follow us there too at Keep on Tolkien Podcast.
Yeah, and again, don't forget to check out our new merch store. We really love our products, guys, and we would love you to own some too. It's really sick that we can do this.
Yeah.
And T-Mill is a great website. It was hard to find an ethical t-shirt company, but I think we did a good job.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So check us out.
Yeah, check us out. That's keep-on-tolkien-podcast.tmill.com.
That's all we got for you today, guys.
I'm Danny J.
And I'm Joel N, and we are
Keep on Tolkien. Array into Luva.